Africa for a moment. Our next poem, Lantern and Glass, is a traditional Ethiopian poem that is used to teach children to work together, and is often thought of as the ideal Ethiopian poem due to its hypersymmetrical structure. Workene Getso will perform this poem in the original Amharic and in English.
So just to clarify, first there's a dialogue between basically hypernified
A lantern?
lantern. So the flame is talking first, and then the glass talks later. Okay, so Panos and Napachuko. Indihi Yefanos Mabratum Besera Yoroku. Indihi Tatala Kabuchuko Gara. Enene Mabratu Brahan Yemiset. Chalama Achute Yemigalalet. Anta Gin Efite, Indi Tadenkara. Zurayan Kebehe, Indi Tagatara. Algabanyamene, Yemisera Sera. Purchuko Ruk Jericho, Demko and Diabara. Ingefat Iyahon, Sarayan Asfiche. Gel Bel Kefite, Brahane Yesfa. And now Purchuko, the glass, is responding. Agogoletema kahun ibitafat. Unetema ante kahunku enkafat. Indihi ishibota lilukelkele. Indelibe abra indefalagote. Bichiko tanago silakele bota. Kongo yenefas shawata. Medana Mabratu Atfiche Bandafta Yugut Derejau Zik Bamalatu Medana Akatot Imun Kagudatu Tabaru Misratin Andauga Kantu. Okay, now this is the English translation, and the boastful flame is speaking. The flame is prideful of his work. Thus he started an altercation with the glass. I'm the light, I give illumination. I turn off the dark, I open the light. You, glass, are trespassing. You are not welcome. You are circling around abrasively in my face. I don't understand how you do your work. My light reaches far, but you hinder my brightness. You are an obstacle. You are ruining my work. Go away. Let my light go further. The glass now responds. If my service is a mistake, if your belief is that I am an obstacle, I will leave. I will give you your space. Burn as bright as your heart desires. When the glass spoke this, he let the flame go. Suddenly from the side, a gust of wind came. The gust of wind turned off the light in a split second. The flame was not very wise. He couldn't weigh the cost and benefit. Now it's too late to work together. The next part is a little bit creative. Let's see.
All right, so thank you, Workene. And now we're going to do something a little different. Workene is going to share with us what we're calling a poetry-adjacent art form called the Adinkra symbols, which are used by the Ashanti of Ghana and the Gaman of Cote d'Ivoire to inscribe their ideas and philosophy. The symbols are used on clothing, ceramics, logos, advertising, and even architectural elements. Workene has prepared some bookmarks made from these Adinkra symbols, which everyone can take one. I think it was enough for everybody to here to have one as a souvenir of today's events.
Okay, so what you have in front of you are bookmarks, and the bookmarks have Adinkra symbols on them. So the Ashanti people of Ghana and the Jema of the Ivory Coast use symbols called Ndinkra to inscribe their ideas and philosophy. And yeah, we thought that was kind of poetic enough for this event, which is why we have it. But they also have other significance, which we will mention later. So I think the symbols are kind of great because they're kind of like zodiac signs in the way that you can kind of just investigate them to infinity. And once you kind of become familiar with them, you can see them everywhere. They're often used in clothing, ceramics. You'll see them on book covers, and some companies might use them for logos. Tattoos are really, you can see them on people's, people like to tattoo on themselves. And these symbols are like highly efficacious, so meaning like they're spiritually charged. And they are meant to, in a way, imbue whatever they're marked on with whatever they mean. I don't know if I have any on me right now. No, I think let's see. Whew, okay.
So what's it for?
This is all right. I might not have it, but I think that's clear. But
They're
there's
on the
one
screen
symbol in
behind you.
particular, which means love always finds itself. It's green. If anybody could, let's see. Yes, it's that. No, yes, it's this one. It means love never loses its way home. And the first time I saw this, it was painted on a facade of a building, and the neighborhood was known for gun violence.
Oh.
So the fact that somebody had went through the effort to paint "Love never loses its way home" is kind of, I don't know, that kind of touches deep.
It's hope.
Yeah, it's hope, exactly.
Yes.
So there are three major reasons why Advaita symbols are really important. And the first is they kind of show us how the diaspora and Africa are linked. Because wherever black folks are, if you look carefully, you'll find these symbols. And next, there are over 200 known Advaita symbols. So it kind of serves as an example of an African system of writing. And lastly, and really most important, is Advaita symbols provide us with African sensibility, which a lot of it has been getting lost. It allows people to look at the world through their predecessor's point of view. I don't know if anybody has something that looks like a crocodile on it. Yes, okay. I know there are two of them. There's this one, and then there's one with interlinked crocodiles.
Okay.
I don't know. So the crocodile, it means adaptability and democracy. And it's kind of a funny look at it because usually I'm familiar with it in horror movies. So that's kind of one way that it kind of shows you what African people, or what certain, at least in Ghana, thought of. We know in Kenya he used it to describe the dictator. So Kenyans don't like crocodiles. Okay, even though that's part of oversimplification. But also the fact that it was thought of, the crocodile was used to symbolize adaptability because it lived both in water and on land, and it was used to symbolize democracy because it was it's a very independent creature, but at the same time they hunt in groups often. If you see them going after wild buffaloes or whatever wildebeests, so the fact that the Ashanti people were using an adaptable, yet independent, yet collaborative creature to symbolize democracy kind of shows us that democracy was not important to them. So it's really important to understand African systems of thought as they are. And this also gives us a map to kind of rediscover what our predecessors thought as beautiful, as powerful, and as divine. And yeah, so make sure to kind of look these up on the internet, and they're kind of a really interesting key into African systems of thought. Thank you for entertaining the wild presentation.
Now we will travel across the ocean again, this time to Jamaica. Here's Spring in New Hampshire by Claude McKay. McKay was a Jamaican-American poet who was closely connected to the Harlem Renaissance in the first half of the 20th century. This poem contrasts the beauty of spring with the drudgery of a laborer who was unable to appreciate it during the daytime. Greg Nedved will perform the poem in English, and Linda Thompson will perform a Spanish translation.
Spring in New Hampshire. To green the springing April grass, to blue the silver speckled sky. For me to linger here, alas, while happy winds go laughing by, wasting the golden hours indoors, washing windows and scrubbing floors. Too wonderful the April night, too faintly sweet the first May flowers, the stars too gloriously bright for me to spend the evening hours. When fields are fresh and streams are leaping, wearied, exhausted, dully sleeping.
La primavera en New Hampshire. Demasiado verde la naciente hierba primavera de abril. Demasiado azul el cielo, punteado de plata, para demorarme aquí, pobre de mí. Mientras vientos alegres pasan riendo y yo pierdo las horas doradas adentro, lavando ventanas y fregando pisos. Demasiado maravillosa la noche de abril. Demasiado dulce el ligero olor de las primeras flores de mayo. Las estrellas demasiado brillantes y gloriosas para yo pasar las horas del crepúsculo. Cuando los campos están frescos y los arroyos saltan, fatigado, agotado, durmiendo apenas.
Thank you, Greg and Linda, for performing that poem. Now we're going back to Africa. We're just jumping back and forth across the ocean. Our next poem, Listen Compatriots, by Nontsatsi Megwedo, brings us to South Africa. Megwedo has the distinction of being the world's first major female Xhosa poet, although her past is shrouded in mystery. Aside from basic personal details disclosed in her writings, such as those concerning her family, personal beliefs, and political beliefs, very little is known about Megwedo. It is known, however, that despite supporting the black resistance under apartheid, she still criticized the African National Congress for fragmenting rather than unifying the black resistance. Megwedo's poetry frequently exhibits the forms of hyperbole and covers issues relating to black girls' rights and education. Ara Amin will perform the poem in English.
I launched Christmas, the old year, and the new year with praise poems. Now I'm going to sing my own praises, then I'll move on again to start something new. Mercy, all of you. Peace, Ntonzi, renowned for your chanting. Your poems are the nation's bounty. No elephant finds its own trunk clumsy. Oh, peace, hen of Africa, with sheltering wing. Hen shepherding chicks, safe from the grasp of birds of prey. You are known by the nation and by heaven's maidens. Poets are so moved that they told each other about you. Upset follows hand, Nkwepo. Cast your shadow on nations and sap their strength. You are a beast that does not stay in the background. Those in the know tremble in tackling you. Peace, dusky woman with the colors of poles. Your stench reeks like the river snake. Mercy, elephant browsing top shoots. You've made a name from Equeto. Peace, Mutonzi, African maize tufts, waving beneath the breeze. You stubbed your toe and felt the pain. A slip of the tongue and they stomped on you. Peace, Mutonzi, African maize tufts. You strip poetry bare and expose it, and the nation's mountains face one another as you sway from side to side. Peace, dusky woman, Dregensburg snow. Like morning dew on Mount Hermon, I stumbled in walking with whites. Oh, I felt the cops' cuffs on me. Peace, woman poet, Vidox flamingo, which thrust its feet forward for takeoff, which thrust its feet backward to land. All the animals rise up. Peace, duck of the African thickets, ungainingly bird with ill-shaped frame. Oh, Ntonzi, African maize tufts, with crooked legs like yours you'll never marry. Peace, woman poet of Africa with sheltering wing. Make way, alas, I was used. Peace, startling perched in a big tree. Your poetry puts feminine wilds to rest. Peace, Ntonzi, African maize tufts. Let spinsters again wear bodices, for no one knows your ancestors. Without skin skirts, there'll be no marriage. Where are your daughters? What do you say? We roam the countryside searching for marriage. We abandon the women and we abandon our dowry. Now we're milked, though calfless, living with no bodies. What's education? Where are your sons? They roam the land in search of nothing. Chickens scratching for scraps, eager at dawn, at dusk, empty-handed. Peace, Ntonzi, matchstick legs marked from roaming through thorn brakes, prophesying. Oh, peace, poetic diviner. Watch out, the wild bird's flapping its wings. Peace, Shizama, who eats her meat raw. No one knows your ancestors. May the browsing elephants make it home. If they stay in the open, they're lost. Peace, Ntonzi, Sandele's daughter, child of one of Nkike's chiefs. You are thrashed on Nkike's plains for praising chiefs and not commoners. Oh, peace, Ntonzi, African maize tufts. Women, Africa's walls are throbbing with sound of your lovely parties. Oh, shame, all the young men wither. The day of your death will darken, Ntonzi. The commander's horse will lose its way. Oh, peace, and to you, Nsika, who roamed through thorn brakes prophesying. Mercy, awesome saint. This is what Nsika spoke of, little red people down on their knees, casting spells when they come to Mpondo. The land was plowed by our fathers' tractors, and the black no place to plow. Mercy, heavens, mercy, earth, mercy then, sun, and mercy, moon. You'll keep your final accounts. Present the reports to the highest power. Make a careful case for us. Where else will we go, crocodile of the pool? Mighty champions of Africa, there's the black approaching in tears. Do you all agree? We agree. By the cross's victor. We agree. Yes, in truth, we agree. Oh, so says the enigmatic forest buck. Toadstools reach up, and then she's through scratching. Keep scooping from the cusp. There lies the land of your ancestors, harassed by evil spirits. There are the words of those spied on by those bearing arms, who watch her even by lightning. Mercy.
So thank you, Aural, for bringing this important poem to life. And now we have a special treat. Aural is her poet herself, originally hailing from Uganda, although she now lives here in Maryland, where she is currently a biography writer and editor with the Poetry Foundation. She will now read her own award-winning poem, Home is a Woman, written in English, which will be followed by a Spanish translation performed by Linda Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The correct pronunciation of my name is Arel Ameng. So I just wanted to let that be known.
I was trying.
Thank you for the effort. This poem is called Home is a Woman. I wrote it in 2018 when I went back to Lano, where I'm from, to bury my paternal grandmother. Home is a woman. Before I enter the Matatu, from the drive to Kampala, then Lira, the driver stops me to tell me he's never seen me on this route. You must live outside. I remember I live outside of my own country. I pretend not to hear. And he says it again, this time behind a cigarette and a smile. He asks me, who are your people? Who is your father, your grandfather? Saying he may know my people. I tell him my mother's name, and her mother's name, and my great-grandmother's names. I tell him about the names of the land they could not inherit unless their brothers or fathers or husbands gave it to them. I name and map the land from that tree to the edge of the river. I tell him where my great-grandmothers were born, where my grandmothers were born, where my mother was born. I hum the names of the women in my family over and over again like a forgotten prayer, a forbidden song. He asks again, who are your forefathers, you girl? And I ask him, and who gave birth to them? And I say the names of the women who gave birth to them. Our ride is silent from Kampala to Lira. He gives me a curious glance from the rearview mirror at my many faces, looking at me while I hold on to my suitcase, while I carry all of the women living inside of me. I carry them home.
El lugar es una mujer. Antes de entrar en el Matatu para viajar a Kampala, luego a Lira, el conductor me detiene para decirme que nunca me ha visto en esta ruta. Debes vivir afuera. Recuerdo que vivo fuera de mi propio país. Finjo no oír. Y él lo repite, esta vez detrás de un cigarro y una sonrisa. Él me pregunta, ¿quiénes son tu gente? ¿Quién es tu padre? ¿Tu abuelo? Y dice que puede ser que conozca a mi gente. Le digo el nombre de mi madre y el nombre de su madre y los nombres de mis bisabuelas. Le cuento los nombres de la tierra que ellas no podrían heredar a menos que sus hermanos o padres o maridos se la dieran. Nombro y mapeo la tierra, desde ese árbol hasta la orilla del río. Le digo dónde nacieron mis bisabuelas, dónde nacieron mis abuelas, dónde nació mi madre. Tarareo los nombres de las mujeres de mi familia, una y otra vez como una oración olvidada, una canción prohibida. Él vuelve a preguntarme, ¿quiénes son tus antepasados, chica? Y yo le pregunto, ¿y quién los dio a luz a ellos? Nuestro viaje desde Kampala hasta Lira es en silencio. Me mira con curiosidad desde el espejo retrovisor, mis múltiples caras. Me mira mientras agarro mi maleta, mientras llevo a todas las mujeres que viven dentro de mí. Les llevo a casa.
Thank you, Aral and Linda. for that performance of Oral's original poem, which has won many awards. Next, we will hear a recording of a poem entitled When You Return, which is written in English with Yoruba elements by the Nigerian poet Macaulay Oluseyi Akínbámi. He delights in creating alliterative works with themes of African unity. When You Return asks, what awaits members of the African diaspora who return to the lands of their ancestors from the white man's land of slavery?
When you return, sojourner to far-flung climes, when you return, will you remember the evening songs chorused by the chirping under the baobab tree? Will you still remember the fame of the great hunter whose courage put the forest's pride to flight? And in him, the most beautiful virgin in the land? When you return, will you remember the fable of the wraith that forced our fathers away from the farm at dusk? Will you still dip your hands in arrow to make a dire for our dear mother? Will you? The market still a beehive of activities. Every market day is as rustic as you left it. Our women the same, untainted by the new ways. Our men have not also feared better, still suspicious of the innovations of the town people. Our children are not ashamed of showing off their beauty for the world to see. The harrowing cries of our virgin still pierce the night as the fire under the mutilator's knife. Will you still remember how to savour inyo, pounded with the sweat of the maidens, and molded with egusi from earthen wares? When you return, will you not now be repulsed with ila, that soup which you handled with such mastery, and amala? The leaves from the forest still keep us strong and virile. The white man's medicines have not offered any hope to our ailments. When you return, teach us no new things about our land, O sojourner. When you return from the white man's land, the land of slavery.
Our next poem is Fate by Odukoya Adenyi, who is a Nigerian poet, essayist, and freelance writer. The poem, written in English, explores the often unfair treatment that widows receive in Nigerian society, particularly in Yoruba culture. This is a contemporary poem. It was just written last year in 2022.
Fate. Beds fall into the penury, the city sells to beckon the gaze of God. Father left mother a gun and a wound. The gun untouchable, the wound are eyes, the wound are squint, the wound are death, the wound touchable in its reflex of delineation. Awards never betrayed the ethics of lust. Tenderness unhindered, breaking forth into a moon hiding perfectly inside the haunts of an owl. A photographed horror of love stalking a venomous gazelle, saying feast upon this flesh. A man will become my grief, his children my dreams in reincarnated forms. They say the wind, the melees of its roll, are echoes stroked by the tears of widows. Listening shards light up, a candle fit lay into Johnny's fitted into creases outlawed by the reckon of fate. They hide her in a room. They call her a witch. The blonde tulip, holding the shell of a snail, the dark hallway into woe. They wear his name in their titting brows, ask the keyhole to say where the light comes from, which means where does his death come from? In Yoruba, Nibo ni Koetwa. Rings her scalp into a calabash, asks her to call his name 7 times over a tied cock. I witnessed from this unfolding the possession of greed, the miscreant of misogyny, the name that epistides a woman into a man's finger tiddling. At school, a boy calls love instead of my name. I point a knife at his eyes, chase him into my nightmare, kill him in my dream. The next morning, I wear his call, I wear his wrist, I wear his body. I choose to walk outside of the sail of my mother's fate.
Now we have one more poem from Nigeria to present. This is an unusual poem. The title is Self-Portrait with Phonemic Analysis by Abdul Karim, who is a Nigerian writer and linguist whose work has been published in numerous prominent global poetry journals. The poem, written in English, presents an analogy between phonemic analysis, that is, how a sound can be altered while it is pronounced, and the transformative power of grief.
I kneel at the Calvary, the sun pelting on my skin like a rainstorm of fragmented pieces of glass. I drag myself towards a crucifix, where phonology says, a boy changes to a broken boy in the environment between grief. I think myself a guitar string, blessing the tonalities of the aches in this poem. Who will crush pomegranates into juice for me? Who will beat the bush of this boy into a floral garden of roses? Who will pour joy like a fricative sound into the living of this boy? I seek the road to the delusion of grieving, where grief is deleted in the environment between bliss, where I will sleep through the night without the body of a knife lurking in my dreams, where I will sleep through the night without drowning in the pool of my own fears, where I will sleep through the night and not wake up as a butterfly's wing. But insertion says, insert grief in the environment between bliss of a boy. Recently, I touched things and the flower out a monochrome of death and my father, how he squeezed life out of him like an orange. Dear poets, when will you stop performing an autopsy with poems on all the broken things you know, including yourself? This poem, a psych word, this poem is psychnos, which drew from your psyche. Like a wood frog, I'm still holding my pee through hours, through the night, where pain is a pipe piper, blowing its pipe to me in these times of woe.
And we have to thank one of our Howard University interns, Ife, who's here, for introducing us to these poems from Nigeria. So thank you, Ife. Okay. So for our final words, in our section on identity, gender, and ethnicity, we will present 2 poems, one titled Privilege Is, and the other Uncovered, by African American poet Anissa Lawrence. Lawrence is an honors student at Howard University. His poems offer an amalgamation of the Black experience, Islam, and personal narratives. Lawrence regularly performs her work in the Washington, D.C. area, as well as in her hometown of Jersey City, New Jersey. And she's a bright light in the up-and-coming generation of American poets. Privilege Is explores the differences between the Black experience and white privilege with the goal of achieving mutual understanding of their respective circumstances. Uncovered illustrates the experience of being a Black Muslim woman in America. So we will enjoy these poems by recording, and I guarantee they'll stick in your mind. They're very impactful.
And the headline read, U.S. Capitol Riot. In the description, there was a word that jumped off the page and into my mouth, and when I realized the word had been too painful to swallow, it crawled down my throat anyway, playing hopscotch in my stomach until I was finally able to disgorge it from my system. There before me was the word protesters. Not thugs, criminals, or even rioters, but protesters. Someone please hand me some Scrabble letters so I can rearrange protesters into privilege. You see, privilege is not knowing what it's like to have an adrenaline rush when you hear sirens. Privilege is your parents telling you to come home before dark because they don't want you out late, not because they want to be able to hear your voice again. Privilege is being able to complement the word parent with an S. I hope this isn't easy to digest. Privilege is not being treated differently because you have an actual cultural background. And yes, I said actual cultural background, emphasis on the word actual. Hold on, let me rewind, slow down, and code switch before I become the next angry black woman on your social media feed who actually isn't angry but honest. She's blunt, real, genuine, fed up with the world playing the quiet game because the winner is always the one who stays silent. Privilege is getting to sleep at night and not having to worry about the interruption of death by the men in blue. Privilege is having a non-functioning brake light and receiving assistance. But for those of us who aren't so privileged, that non-functioning brake light is a one-way ticket to the grave. Privilege is getting to go outside and play with a toy gun because they are only pretend, right? Privilege is having the opportunity to walk outside with whatever type of clothing you choose and not being identified as sketchy, later to be identified as dead. Privilege is telling your mother you're going to the store to buy a snack and that you'll be back. But for those of us who aren't so privileged, that is nothing but another broken promise. Privilege is being put on death row for a crime you actually committed, and no, I don't support the death penalty. Privilege is not having to include disclaimers. Privilege is seldom attending funerals because there aren't dead bodies dropping in your community like flies. Privilege is saying, I can't breathe, and having someone listen. Privilege is not having to remember a never-ending list of individuals on a list titled Say Their Names. Privilege is disrespecting a nation and being called a protester. But for those of us who aren't so privileged, who protest peacefully against injustice, we're thugs, rioters, criminals, disturbances to the peace, another dead body to join our ancestors in the ground. You know, I can never quite spell the word privilege. Not because I am ignorant, but because the words are structured into a concept I can't identify with. Ladies and gentlemen, privilege is getting to take everything I just said and forget it in a matter of minutes. Because none of what I said fits into your reality, but for those of us who aren't so privileged, we don't have that liberty. My blackness is an intersection between black, Muslim, and woman. A triple threat of no regrets, nor will I forget the debt that my ancestors paid for me to be here. I walk as a silhouette. Some know me to be a duet, so they call me the melanin hijabi. My blackness is not simply synonymous with struggle, racism, and pain, because my blackness is a dichotomy, and honestly, on the other side of that is love. Breaking rules is my speciality, and I'm so smooth the way I execute is never a criminality. I know you're thinking how my words flow so organically. I attribute all greatness to Allah, Ar-Rahim, Al-Qudus, Al-Muhaymin, and sporadically he sprinkles some of his phenomenality my way. Someone once told me my blackness carries a negative connotation, a narrative that paints black as having no time to love. They said, "You are rebellious for doing so." My blackness replied, "If I am a rebel, then I'll be the Malcolm X to your Martin Luther King, because my blackness shines so bright that it is lovable in fall, winter, summer, and spring. And the love that I have for my blackness ain't just a fling. Baby, this thing is everlasting. So who are you to tell me I am unlovable?"
We were also introduced to these poems by Anissa Lawrence from our other Howard University intern, Rukne Gediso. So Howard really contributed a lot to this event, and we're very grateful for their support. So this concludes the formal presentation portion of our program. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of social justice themed poetry and songs from across Africa and the diaspora, from ancient times to the present. Thank you for taking the time to attend the program today. Before we begin our reception, I would once again like to thank all the authors, translators, and performers whose works and artistry were featured today, along with our drummers, Jeffrey B. Halverson, PhD, and Neil Peacock for their excellent accomplishment. Could all of you stand up, please, and take a bow? And finally, if you would like to explore more of our Power of Poetry exhibit or learn more about the National Museum of Language in general, please visit us at languagemuseum.org. All right, well, let's all head back and